Welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV. I'm Jeff Allison, and this is my International Scout 2, as you guys all know, Project Creep. Finally thinking I'm ready to go ahead and start working on the front fenders. Just like I did the rear quarter panels, I want to put in a new wheel lip. I've got some rust repairs down in the bottom. There's a big dent up here in the front. The nice thing is I can get to the back side of it. So I've kind of played with the layout here, and I'll back the camera off so you can see it. But so we basically want to get the dents out first, so that when we start putting heat on it, welding the panel in, we're not taking the stress out by putting heat into the fender. And then when you go to take the dent out afterwards, you're putting stress into the fender because you've already de-stressed it with heat. I think that makes sense. So the idea is, whenever you're doing body work and you're going to be replacing panels, my suggestion would be you always try and get all the dents out that you can before you ever start cutting and welding on it, because all that cutting and welding could relieve the stresses that you're going to want to take out with the dent. So with that said, I'm going to back the camera off, let you get a view of what I'm planning to do with this fender skin, and it's exactly the same piece I used on the back. It's a rear Ford F-150. The only difference is in the back I took a slice out and we sectioned out about I think it was 3/4 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch, something like that. On the front we're going to leave the whole panel because we need the little bit larger opening just for the wheel to turn anyway. So now what you're seeing is I've got the panel just clecoed in at the top here in the corners, and there's actually been about 3 or 4 holes drilled on each end because I kept changing the angle just a little bit and trying to get it all where I liked it. And then I laid this green tape on here just to kind of give myself an idea of where I wanted to cut it. And once I did that, then I shifted it back a little further. So the panel is where I'm actually going to go. This green tape, something more like that. And then we'll come back in and probably catch real close to where the original corner was. But what I am going to do is take patterns off of the rear and try and match that opening a little bit, just like I did at the rear of the quarter panel, so that you kind of have that same look. In the front, I'm just going to come down and mimic the original curves in the fender, but open it up about, what, 1.25 inches there or so. And the back will open up, about 2.5, 3 inches, which will give a little better clearance right here. And then when you're turning, if you get the little articulation going, you're not jamming that wheel up into the fender. The other thing is, these are 31-inch tall tires, and I think I've mentioned it before. I'm really tempted to try and find a set of 33s to fill that out just a little more. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, I've got this clecoed on. I'm going to mark my 2 final points here as I take the clecos off and go, that's where I wanted it. And then first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this dent out of the front, and we'll start taking some of the Bondo out of this bottom corner so we can see how much work we've got in here versus what we want to take out anyway. I think you can see this dent right here, and it's only about I don't know, 1/4, 3/8 of an inch deep, but it's right on this body line, so we're gonna have to get the dent out and straighten this body line just a little bit as we go. Good news is it happened after it had probably been sitting, because there's no real rust in it, so it probably hadn't been outside much after that dent happened. So for now, I'm just going to put my palm against it so I can kind of feel. I'm going to use this is actually a body hammer for doing door skins, but I find the curve and the narrow face on it, on this end especially, work really well in some of these corners, and then this flatter area, just because of the hook, lets you kind of get around a corner or behind stuff. I'm not hitting real hard here, I'm just tapping away at it. Got a little high right there. And I have another hammer with a square edge that'll let me get right up against the body line. Got a couple of little high spots and one little low spot there. So let me grab a something to slap at it with a little bit. Another tool that a lot of times will help is to get a nylon hammer, just because it won't tend to mar any surfaces. And all that spoon does is spread the load a little bit more so that you're not trying to strike one little particular spot where you might have a high or a low. I think we got it. One low spot right here. That feels pretty good now. We've got that dent out. And honestly, if it wasn't for the rust in the back corner, this would be a great fender. I'd feel bad about cutting it up, but because all the rust that's in the bottom, and I know this rust was there before, I know that most of this rust was here before the truck was painted this gunmetal gray color. And the inner fender's rusted a little bit, so all of this area is going to have to be reworked anyway, so kind of takes the guilt of as much cutting as I'm going to do. I've also got a dent right here in the bottom, so we'll pull this fender off now, lay it up on the cart, and go ahead and knock this dent out as well. And then I think we can go ahead and start making our plan for our patch panel. So here's a look at the inside of the fender. You can see it's cracked and rusted through up here, and then all the way down inside here. So we're going to end up cleaning up a bunch of this. Then you can see old Bondo in here, so they just filled over it. So we'll end up cleaning this up as much as we can with a wire wheel, and then taking this panel off so we can get in here. And we'll save this. Probably have to remake it because there's some rust holes in it, so it's just a piece of sheet metal with a couple of holes and a couple of nuts welded to it, so it'd be quicker to make a new one than it would be to fix this one. But we'll save it so we have the pattern. We've also got some holes in here, but overall the fender's pretty good. It needs some work in here. There's a couple places where they've already welded up some holes, but we'll go ahead and get a wire wheel and get this all cleaned off. So I think you can see all this now. There's quite a bit of rust up in here in this lip. And then it looks to me like somebody welded just a piece of metal. I can see the spot welds all along here. They just covered over the original rust hole rather than actually fix it. So we're going to find quite a bit of Bondo in the front side of this that we'll need to get out. And we still need to take this one dent out, which I guess we could do that right now. So we're going to use this square tip, and we're going to use a dolly. I'm not sure you can see this dent. From this side, it's only about maybe 8 3/16 tall, and it looks like somebody just caught the door and this fender probably backing out. So I'm going to start with my palm. What I'm doing is you're trying to find and reverse the damage the way it was done. So if you imagine somebody scraped probably backwards like this as they were backing out with something, and so it's real gentle up here and real deep here, so you want to just kind of work your way around it, moving that dent back out the same way it got put in. Okay, so I've done about all I can now with just putting my palm under there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hammer off dolly. So I'm going to put the dolly right on the edge of the dent, and I'm going to hammer over here. So I'm not actually hammering here. That'll stretch the metal. Oops, sorry. So I'm going to hammer off dolly. I mean, I'm going to put the dolly up against the edge of the dent, and where I hammer is going to be over here, because if I hammer on it, that's going to stretch the metal. Come to the other side and do the same thing. You can hear the difference when I'm hitting. Hear that? That's me hitting on the dolly versus off the dolly. Guys, and don't misunderstand me when I talk about the damage and how it was repaired or not repaired. My dad and my brother, when they had this work done, knew full well that the body shop was just covering it up. And what they told me was the price to actually fix the damage was more than they were willing to put into the truck at the time. So they elected to have them essentially hide it, make it pretty. My brother could drive it to high school, and that's what happened. So don't misunderstand me. I'm not complaining about the guys, the way the work was done. That was what they were paid to do. That was the option, one of the options my dad and my brother were given, and they were well aware of how the work was going to be completed. We've about got this dent out. We need to do a little bit of slapping on it. Two dents right here in the very edge of this that are right in the body line. I think I got them there. So now you can see the scuff marks where whatever caught it was backing up, hit the fender, drug into it, and then took it all the way into the door. So we'll be fixing the door in a little while too. I think we are mostly there. The next thing, you see a rust bubble right there. So we need to get the Bondo and whatever else right out of this area. We need to take that piece of trim off. And then we can get a good idea of what's actually going on with this fender. I've cleaned off the front of the fender here, and I'm kind of hoping as I take this off I'll be able to reuse this piece that I cut off and move it up. The compound curve here may not allow for that. In the back we've got all the Bondo off. We're down to just basically paint and primer up the top here. We can see this patch panel where they just tacked on it looks like they used a spot welder. They spot welded on just a piece of metal over the top of the old rust, and then it didn't take very long and it would have been rusting because moisture would have been trapped between the two, but whatever, it worked. That's what the gentleman that did the work, that's what he was paid to do. Nice thing here is I finally have found a body line, a shape line in the truck. Somebody had mentioned that there should be a body line underneath that piece of trim, and sure enough it was right below it. Once I got all the Bondo off the bottom here and off the top, basically they just slathered it with so much Bondo it was gone. And once I got that off and got all the Bondo out of the way, you can actually see a true body line. Now it disappears right here where they've done a bunch of body work and filled all this area, but it's no big deal. We're taking most of that out anyway, and then I'll come back in and probably with a hammer much like this that has the real sharp edge from the back side, kind of redefine that line so that we can try and make it show up in the doors, and when we do the body work on the quarter panels, we can try and make it all appear there. So I think we're about ready to put the patch panel in. At least set the patch panel on here and go ahead and figure out where we need to take paint off so that we can weld that panel in. Additionally, I've taken a piece of cardboard and marked off some measurements and stuff so that I have this marker hole located. So once I'm done with my patch panel, if I've covered this up or part of it or whatever, I can refind it, I guess. I can find where this hole needs to be so that it matches the stock location. We've got 2 holes back here for the emblem, and I don't think we're going to be anywhere, well, I know we're not, because our panel is going to be way over here somewhere, and we'll be shortening that even. So we're going to be able to leave those holes and just relocate our emblem when we're done. So one of the things I'm going to do before we ever start welding on this thing, I'm going to go get the inner fender structure and bolt it in place so that we take any warp and twist out of the fender itself. And then I don't want this forward body line. We didn't use it on the on the quarter panels either. So we're going to be cutting this panel off below that line. We'll just pick a spot here because all this metal up here is good, so we just need to save this curve. So as long as we come, maybe an inch down all the way across, and then probably even make a curve here in this. I'm going to mark this in silver. And this is just to give us an idea. This marks just to give us an idea of about where we need to make sure we have some clean metal. Clean a swath of metal, and like I said, I think when I cut this, I'll probably cut it in a curve here. By eliminating a square corner when you're welding, you don't get such a hot spot and tend to get a lot of warpage right there. So by doing it in a curve, we kind of save ourselves a little bit of work on that. And then you guys remember how I learned, and I believe it was Fitzy's Garage or Fitzy's Fabrication or something, his channel. I don't know why I never knew this trick, but he calls it button cut, or button cut, I think is what he calls it. But basically he tacks his patch panel to his fender in this case, and then takes his cutoff wheel and at about a 30 or 40 degree angle cuts 4 to 6 inches and welds it up. And as you're cutting it, the 2 pieces come together, and welding it. So we're going to use his technique again, because I wish I'd have known that for the last 20 years. It's such a better technique than the ones I've used, and at least so far I really like it. So I think that's where we're at. We're going to end up, I'll probably need to come in and drill a couple new holes for our clecos. We're going to drop down about an inch with our cutoff, and we'll just kind of come in and drill a couple new holes down here somewhere to reestablish this panel. So before I take it off this time, we'll do that, and then I'll go get the inner fender and we'll bolt all that together.